The loss of Brevin Jordan put the Texans tight end position under the microscope. Do they have enough, and who can you trust that's on the roster right now? Let's talk about it. Presented by my friends at Platinum AC and Heating. From repairs to replacements to simple preventative maintenance, Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating can take care of all of your HVAC needs. So Brevin Jordan goes down earlier this week with a knee injury. The team placed him on season-ending injured reserve. His year is over, unfortunately, and that was a tough thing for the Texans to go through in practice. And it was tough to see Brevin Jordan, a guy that put in all that work, all that rehab, and was having a fantastic camp up to this point. That's the element of Brevin Jordan's absence that is the toughest to deal with, probably for him and, well, for the Texans, is he looked like a really good football player and looked like a football player the Texans could have put out there on offense and trust on a consistent basis. In that practice alone where he got injured, he was a dynamic force, catching a few balls in some tough spots from C.J. Stroud. He'd been a player that had been out there in 2 tight end sets with the first team offense a couple of different times throughout the course of practice. And he'd been a guy that Stroud had found time and time again in the middle of the field, over on the side of the field. He had had some really nice moments in camp. So it's tough to see that player go down, but also that's a piece of the offense that the Texans were counting on. Look, Cade Stover's route running has gotten better, but Brevin Jordan was still a better pass-catching tight end than Cade Stover. So that's something that the Texans will have to adjust in their tight end plan. There's not a ton of guys that could exactly do what Brevin Jordan was doing that you could just one-for-one replace him. So that is the precarious spot for the tight end position, in that they don't really have the ability to one-to-one replace Brevin Jordan. So how do they go about it? What are their options? Let's go through all the tight ends they've got, kind of give you an update on how they've been doing in training camp, and maybe there's something to be done here at the tight end position. Let's start with Dalton Schultz, who's looked much better than the 2024 version of Dalton Schultz. D'Amico Ryans said earlier in camp he feels like he's getting the Dallas Cowboys version of Dalton Schultz that they signed a couple of years ago. Now, 2023 Schultz was more than fine. Now, he had a little bit smaller contract, and the expectations coming off of the tight end wasteland that the Texans have been a part of the previous few years were a little bit different than the expectations heading into 2024, when he had a big contract and you were hoping for more than the previous season. Schultz didn't really pay off on that last year. He didn't look like himself. He didn't operate like himself, and he's one of the worst blocking tight ends in all of football. Well, I'm here to tell you that he looks a lot more like 2023 Dalton Schultz. I can't tell you it's going to be Dallas Dalton Schultz, but is it going to be better than 2024's version? It seems to be trending that way. He looks more agile. He looks quicker. He looks faster. His routes are crisper. And the body language is better, which is something that's not always great with Dalton Schultz on the football field. And even when he's been put in blocking situations, he's been put in some pretty good blocking situations and held his own. Now, there was one time where he had to solo block Will Anderson. That didn't go well. But he hadn't been put in a lot of those positions, and that's part of Nick Caley's charge as the offensive coordinators. Don't put Dalton Schultz in those situations. Put him in a situation where he can succeed. You know where he succeeds a lot is that short and intermediate option for C.J. Stroud. As Stroud runs through those progressions, Schultz gets open, turns around, is a big target for Stroud, and becomes an available receiver for him quickly in routes, and Stroud's able to get rid of the ball. Staying on time with this offense, taking what the defense gives them, not holding on to the ball too long. Dalton Schultz will all be important pieces of that element of this Houston Texans offense. He's for sure on the team. They're for sure going to use him, and they're going to rely on him even a little bit more from that receiving situation because of Brevin Jordan's injury. How about Cade Stover, the second-year tight end, just a few years still into his journey as a tight end, a former defensive player. I really like what Stover's brought to the table in training camp. The receiving element of his game is so much better than it looked a year ago. He looks crisp in his routes. He looks fluid when he's out there running. He is a player that has a little bit more juice in the receiving game than a year ago. He was sort of a last-ditch effort in the receiving game a year ago, but he looks like a much more trustable player from the receiving element of his game based on the work that he put in this past offseason. D'Amico Ryans has praised that work a handful of times here in training camp, and you can see it out there on the field. Now, Stover's going to block a lot for this team. Now, the pass blocking last year for Stover, it wasn't very good. The run blocking was a little bit better, and you've seen a little bit more of that. He can run block for this team and has done that pretty well in training camp. It's not totally a game situation, but Stover can get out there and mix it up on the ground. But the pass blocking has looked a little bit better. It's ticked up, just like with Dalton Schultz having the pass blocking tick up. It's done the same with Cade Stover. In fact, Stover and Schultz have combined for some really impressive blocking moments in training camp. They've put them in a tandem against a guy like Will Anderson on occasion, and it's gone the way of the tight ends, not the way of the defensive end in that situation. So for Stover, his role increases a little bit with Brevin Jordan. If the Texans are going to use some two tight end sets, they're going to put him on the field with Dalton Schultz a lot more. He's going to need to give them a little bit more in receiving than maybe they thought. They thought they're going to have Brevin Jordan for some of those receiving situations, but Stover's going to have to give them a little bit more. But it also alters the way the Texans may operate with their blocking and what type of plays they might call with two tight ends, because Stover has a little bit more blocking prowess and a little bit less receiving prowess than a guy like Brevin Jordan. So it changes a little bit. Now, that third tight end spot, your guess is as good as mine, but don't guess when it comes to your HVAC. Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating was the guy that did my air conditioner when earlier this summer I needed a brand new air conditioner. His guys took care of it like that. It was so fast, so quick, had the new AC, and it was cooling down in no time. Don't sit in a hot house if your AC needs a repair, if you need to get a brand new one, if you just need simple preventative maintenance to make sure it blows a little cooler, Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating can do it. He even manages HVAC for commercial businesses as well. He can take care of that for you. All of your AC needs are with Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating. When you need an AC guy, you need the AC guy. That's Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating. So you know about Cade Stover, you know about Dalton Schultz. They're on the team. They're going to be Houston Texans. The rest of these guys, I don't know about it. Irv Smith's been hurt for over a week now. He's got to get back on the field. He's got to show something if he wants to make this roster. He was definitely an outside looking in type of guy even before the Brevin Jordan injury, and he's still an outside looking in type of guy after the Brevin Jordan injury because he hasn't been on the field. Irv Smith's got to get in there, showcase a little blocking, a little receiving. He had some moments early in training camp and a couple of moments in OTAs and mini camps earlier this year where he looked like there was a receiving something to him, but he's a bigger player. He looks like he's in good shape, and they're going to need him to maybe fill in some of those tight end moments as soon as he can get healthy. Irv Smith, he's got a pretty long task to make this roster. He's got some catching up to do because he's been out with that injury. Luke Lachey is the 7th-round pick that the Texans drafted this past draft, and he was a standout at Iowa, got hurt, and then was just okay at Iowa, and he's really just been okay in training camp. I don't have a lot of Luke Lachey moments to tell you about over the course of training camp because he hasn't stood out a lot. Yeah, he had a drop one day, but then he had a nice catch later in that practice to kind of make up for it. And in the first practice after Brevin Jordan's injury, Lachey had some really impressive one-on-one moments, and he got loose against a couple of different defenders in the one-on-one drills where the tight ends and the running backs went against the safeties and the linebackers. And it's a good job by Lachey in those, but in the team periods, he wasn't moving guys out of the way. He wasn't a big factor in the receiving game. So there's still a lot to develop with Luke Lachey. Now, could he be certainly a practice squad player and a break glass in case of emergency tight end? Yeah, he certainly could be in that vein. I don't know that he's ready for the 53-man roster right now. It doesn't feel like just yet you could trust that third tight end spot to Luke Lachey. So I wouldn't bet on that being the case. I would say amongst the other options, if you're looking at third tight end, he seems to be the favorite. Dalton Keene has been on this team a couple of different times. He's still on this team now after getting signed in the middle of last week. Fullback / tight end. I don't think there's much there with Dalton Keene. I don't know that you can rely on him to be that third tight end. So I'm not going to spend too much time on Dalton Keene. He seems like a body that's here to help fill out and figure out the rest of training camp. Now, here's the twist. This guy's not technically a tight end, but he practices with the tight ends. He does tight end stuff, and he could very easily be tight end 3 while also being fullback 1. That's Yakob Johnson, the Texans fullback. Yakob Johnson goes out there and runs routes, has some success. He's actually had some really nice hands days catching the football at the tight end position. And of course, being a fullback, he's a natural blocker. He's a guy that goes out there and mixes things up, not only from that fullback spot, but the Texans put him on the end of the offensive line and let him block there on the edge a couple of different times. Could they get enough out of Yakob Johnson to make him the pseudo third tight end and use him as the fullback? Kind of feels like they could, especially if you don't use 3 tight ends that much or you don't use the fullback that much. And yeah, he's going to have to contribute on special teams. But if you start to kind of think about, hey, do you have enough snaps without it being too many snaps to make Yakob Johnson work as the third tight end? It kind of feels like you might if you're the Houston Texans. And if you could make him the third tight end while also being the fullback for the team, you save a roster spot to kind of dump somewhere else on the roster. Maybe you want to keep an extra running back or an extra wide receiver or another linebacker or defensive lineman. If Yakob Johnson can fill 2 roles at once, fullback 1, tight end 3, then you save yourself a roster spot in the 53-man roster crunch. That's something to think about there for the Texans. I actually like that as the best plan, though it's going to be tough to not have that additional big body, that additional tight end body. And ultimately, with the bodies that they do have and the injuries that they are dealing with, they may need to add just another body to fill out the tight end room throughout the rest of camp. They got a couple of joint practices, a couple of preseason games left. They may need to add a tight end that maybe doesn't have a shot to make the roster, but if impresses in his time, could make himself a home on the practice squad. That's where the tight end situation is right now. I don't love it for the Texans because you would have liked to have the 3 options at tight end and be able to mix and match and change things around with Brevin Jordan. You're still okay with the 2 in Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover, but it takes a little bit of the explosiveness away with Brevin Jordan missing because he's a better receiver than Cade Stover at this point. It takes away the versatility that you could have had at the tight end position. So it was an unfortunate injury for the Texans to deal with. Certainly unfortunate for Brevin Jordan. They got some options, but none of them are just going to blow your socks off here at tight end. It's going to be up to Stover and Schultz to really take care of this position this season. What say you? You like some of these options on the roster, or you've been scouring free agency for a new tight end? Let me know in the comment section down below. On your way down there, throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out SNL with myself and Landry Locker weekdays live at 4 p.m. Appreciate you watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.